Right, we got our pre-commission meeting starting at 8:02 a.m. Do we have any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda?
Grant, that's just extending the period of agreement out to September 2026, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's all I'm looking at.
What was that again?
It's just extending the grant, yeah.
All right, now I guess, can we talk about the pump? Just so that we can,
The surplus pump?
yep.
Yeah, so that is the, if you pass by utilities, there's a blue pump sitting there in the grass. It's just an old bypass pump, it's worn out. We've actually purchased 3 this year we had in the budget to replace, and that's just an old one. It needs about $14,000 worth of work, and we'll probably surplus this thing and make $1,500 on it, so.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so any more on the consent agenda? Looks like I can pass it on to Mayor now.
It's like a hobby. Morning, man.
So
We were
just,
just discussing the consent agenda. There's no questions really.
Oh, we're caught to order? All right,
Yes.
great.
It's already done the consent agenda. We're on number 12.
Any discussion about number 12?
it's the RV.
The RV.
From my understanding, I think one of us wanted to put it back on the agenda, so. Yeah, so I think, I've talked to a lot of different residents and done a lot of thinking about this, and I think the issue that we're having is a lot of the things are not standardized. Not any of our fault, not the city's fault, just over the years. Like, your water meters are in different spots depending on your plot of land. The other thing we talked about was blocking a sidewalk, and sidewalks are not standardized as far as how far they are from the sidewalk. And we're trying to create a standard when that stuff's not even standardized. And I think that's the struggle we're getting with. I did have a couple questions on it. One, from I understand, the standard for code enforcement was mainly complaint driven. So before this ordinance, nothing was written up. The ordinance was written where you couldn't park it in your front yard at all. We write the ordinance, now 33 of them written up. Was any of those complaint driven, or was that all just code enforcement doing it amongst themselves?
Well, I'll be glad to answer that for you. The old ordinance had multiple tentacles besides RV connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a venue big enough for me to start writing that. How did we get here? We got here because Panama City changed their ordinance. So when that happened, I knew the spillover would probably ultimately end up here.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I had code enforcement go out and spot check that entire ordinance.
Right.
The old one. That's when they brought me the information. I went straight to the city manager. I said, there's trouble on the horizon. Here's what needs to happen. We need to truly look at our ordinance and see if it needs to be rewritten. Because it was basically overarching on people's property that had wave runners, boats, any of those items were all part of that old ordinance. Again, we don't have a venue big enough if I'd have started writing then, because we had never had a complaint before on any of this stuff.
Right.
So once Panama City started with theirs, we had the gentleman over there that you saw, you got the emails just like I did. He started then, as soon as Panama City, looking at our ordinances, wanting us to enforce that. At that point, I said, let's look at this. Let's make sure that we're within the scope of telling people what they can do on their personal property. It took you guys 6 meetings to make a decision, okay? And ultimately, you said, and before we left that day, they said, I got to have some type of guide. I pulled Bobby Baker up here, Chris Lightfoot. The guide was the water meter. We had that meeting. About 6 people showed up, okay? Meeting with the city manager. In that meeting, 4 of the 6 said, look, brother, I'm over the sidewalk. I'm gonna move mine.
Right.
One of them has a meter in the backyard, okay? We're gonna address that however we need to, because we're gonna say, hey, I get it, you're in Cameron's Crossing. But I think what we got going is moving very well, and I'm gonna say 95% have been self-compliant and self-corrected the problem already, except for the 6 that showed up here, down there, that didn't show up in a commission meeting.
But it still doesn't answer my question. My question is, before the ordinance, right, none of it was written up. Once we did the ordinance, then things started getting written up. And the way it was always explained to me was mainly complaint driven. So was any of those complaint driven, the 33 that were written up?
We can initiate, and
I
yeah.
know you can.
But to answer your question, because you're very good at, you want to answer it, prior to, we didn't have any complaints at all. Until Panama City started to do their ordinance.
Right.
So to answer your question, no, we didn't have any that were complaint driven, but I could read the writing on the wall that this was going to happen in Lynn. So that's when I told them to go out and get just a purview of where we'll stand if we try to enforce the old ordinance. That's where your 300 violations came from. That we
Right.
keep
I
talking
get
about.
that. I
But
get
to
that.
answer your question, no, we did not at that point.
Were
But
those
the way,
written
but the
up?
way it was always explained to me was code enforcement is mainly complaint driven. I'm just trying to figure out, is that the standard or is that not the standard?
It is the standard, but you also look at the statute, what it says, code enforcement and law enforcement can initiate as well.
Right. I get that.
But yes, we're following the statute, we're following the ordinance.
I'm just trying to figure out what the standard is. The standard mainly complaint driven or not complaint driven?
Complaint driven.
Okay. But none of these were complaint driven.
Which ones?
For the 33 that were written up.
Sir, you got the emails from that gentleman over behind Publix. You were CC'd in every one of those emails where he's complaining. How many emails did he send us? And he CC'd the commission. I sent them to
Right, I
Ms.
get
Tender
that.
the other night.
Chief, I think he's talking about the letters that were sent. That's what he's talking about. When he says
Yeah.
written up, I think that's
There's a
what he's
difference
talking
in
about.
how
Are
the
people
letter-
being fined?
You say,
Yeah.
right,
No, ma'am.
nobody's
Nobody's
being
being
fined.
fined.
They're being sent a letter saying, hey, we're giving you 30 days to comply.
Right.
Those 30 came from, they're going around the city doing sections at a time. That's from the, stemming from that gentleman over there making the multiple complaints.
And code enforcement did say at table talk, while they're out doing other complaints, if they see people within that neighborhood, they do come back and they'll just send them a letter
I
out.
opened one this morning, or had them open one on Georgia Avenue. There's one that's been sitting in the front yard down from Blue Moon. I don't know for how many years, but it's sitting right there in the middle of the yard. I said, hey, will you guys send him a letter? That's our job to do that.
I get that. But it's, when we're told it's mainly complaint driven, and then we wrote all these up, because I wasn't expecting this. Once we pass this, I figured, okay, we might have a handful of people get a complaint, and then we might have to re-engage on this. But then I saw that we got like 33 of them written up. So that kind of surprised me. I was like, what the heck? Was there 33 complaints? No. That's why I'm trying to figure out what the standard is. Is the standard?
The standard is when you pass an ordinance, I'll give you an example, okay? I'm gonna go away from there. When an ordinance is passed, okay, that you guys want, you made the decision on, we have to go out and determine, because it was complaint driven from a citizen, let's get out in front of it. Let's go ahead and send a letter to this person because we found them in violation. They started on that quadrant, they'll move to another quadrant, okay? It ended up being 33, and I'm gonna have to say self-corrected. Probably 15 or 20 of them immediately self-corrected when the ordinance was passed.
Okay.
Okay, so again, you guys did what we asked you to do. We're just enforcing it. That's
I get
part of
that.
it. But yes, we are gonna go out.
I'm never gonna sit there and say, don't enforce the law. I will never say that.
Okay, then where are we going?
But, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out is what is
I'm
the
getting a lot of
standard?
complaints too. And I'm just letting everybody know, I know they're all gonna be here tomorrow, because I didn't really know how, you got back to me on the code enforcement part. The one question I had, and I might be misinformed, people could make a complaint, code enforcement could go out and take care of it.
Yes.
And then somebody wrote to me years, not this year, not the last 5 meetings, that whoever turns somebody into code enforcement has to give their name.
Yes, ma'am.
That's true.
Nobody-
So are we creating really toxic neighbors? I mean, think about it. I wouldn't complain about,
That's a state statute. We
That's
didn't
Yeah.
state
create
statute.
State
Yeah, I
statute.
can't-
so we just started to enforce that, yeah.
Yeah, that's, unfortunately, that's a state law.
Have you had any problems with that? Because I would think
I
you
mean, you
would,
get people call in and say, hey, I don't want to leave my name, but this is happening, and
yeah.
so, I mean, we will go out looking, we knock on a lot of doors, but this one gentleman, I don't know how many emails I got, I think you guys were CC'd on him, but he wouldn't stop. He just kept on with it. And so ultimately, that's the decision. We did it zone by zone. It's almost like a neighborhood canvas. Let's look at them. Let's send letters, right? So that's what we did. So when you're saying they got wrote up, they're not written up. A case was opened, right? And they got a letter that said, hey, please comply within 30 days. Then within that 30 days, we go out and do a recheck, and you're going to.
So that's not considered a write-up?
No, it's just a.
Just a
notice.
warning.
It's a
Yeah.
notice.
It's letting them know,
Much
the
different.
letter says,
I mean,
that-
Jimmy, what happens ultimately is if they don't comply within the 30 days, maybe around the 40th day, we'll go back and then we'll issue the citation. And that's when it'll start the process of going before the magistrate. But we want people to self-correct. We try to do the next right thing by knocking on their doors.
Okay.
Okay? It's a lot easier, and I think, and again, I think that it has been received well, and I think we've got great compliance overall. So.
and I did send an email back in clarification and say it was a letter just letting them know that the ordinance had changed, wasn't a citation. The law
There's a
had
difference
changed.
between a warning and a write-up. So this was a warning.
Yeah, it's a notice. It's actually a notice. That's what it's titled.
Okay.
We're giving you notice that you're in violation. Please correct it within 30 days.
Do they have another 30 and then go before the magistrate in 45?
Well, they can ask for an extension.
Extension.
For example, one of the people in that meeting said,
Correct.
hey, I'm not going to be in compliance within the 30 days. And he asked, in the open, I'm about to go on a camping trip for 70 days. Can I have an extension? And we said, and Brian granted it right there. He said, absolutely. They go above and beyond to try to work with people. Okay, so it's not like we're issuing citations, you're in violation, you got this many days. We try to work with anybody and everybody.
Okay.
I know I had one guy, he was actually complaining, but he hadn't gotten a letter. I think he was complaining because he hadn't gotten a letter.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and we
But
just
he
have a
was on
meeting.
vacation. His
Right.
neighbor got the letter because they both have them parked
He
out
was
front.
actually in the meeting,
Yeah.
that guy was. and I
Oh, really?
talked to
Yeah, he
him,
did.
And actually, Brian said, you're on my desk. He knew the address. And he goes, well, sir, I'm going to fix it. So what do we do with that one? You would chunk it. You know what I'm saying? The guy's
Yeah.
going to comply.
So the other question I have is someone told me that before the ordinance, if it was an RV with a motor, so basically it's a drivable motorhome, that it was legal to park in their driveway before this ordinance, but not after this ordinance. Is that right?
Okay. So what it said is they classified an RV, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was some language in there that had that if it was drivable, it didn't fall under the RV ordinance.
Right.
But the majority of those that you're referring to, ultimately, the one that I can say for certain, it was well over the sidewalk. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you guys, I feel you made the right call. We got a good ordinance in place. It's working. So I think overall, but yes, to get back to your question, that's the way that the old ordinance read. If it was drivable, it was considered as a motor vehicle, unlike an RV. So you guys addressed it, and they are recreational vehicles. Here's the thing, I didn't like the old ordinance. I didn't like the strings attached to it. I don't feel that we should be infringing on someone's Fourth Amendment, telling them, going on their property and where I'm going, what can you have, right, in your driveway? And there were so many tentacles added to it. And I remember, I think you were even the one that said, hey, let's narrow this down to RVs only, right? During the meeting, we don't want all that other language dealing with boats, wave runners, and everything else in the driveway. Let's concentrate on RVs, and that's what you all did. You separated it, unlike the old ordinance that had everything.
So if you take a regular car if it's parked in the way of the driveway, is that in violation?
A car, no. We have a Florida state statute that can deal with blocking sidewalks and.
So there's something.
There's a Florida state statute to deal with that, yes.
Okay.
Is there a limit to how many cars they can have in their yard?
No.
No limit.
Are ULDC
As long as
also,
they're tagged, you know, and they have a valid registration on them, then we can. And it's just like the RVs, the same thing, you know, the Class C motorhomes or the Class A's, they had to have a valid tag on them when they were considered a vehicle at that time. So those are things that we look for and try to, you know, take care of.
our ULDC also already says that you can't have something in the public right of way after 10 PM if it's longer than 18 feet.
Yeah, and it says other stuff. It says
Yeah.
motorhomes,
Right.
trailers. It
So
mentions a lot
again,
of-
I feel overall we did well with the way it's written, and I think we're getting overall compliance. We certainly are never gonna make everybody happy.
No, we're not, but
Right.
the big complaint I'm getting is the water meters. There's some people's water meters that are like, doesn't give them like anything.
Well, you gotta look at the guy. I had a water leak this past weekend, 2 weekends ago. What's the first thing Chris will tell you? What side of the meter's on? It on?
Right.
It's on my side, it's yours, okay?
Right.
So I mean, if we're gonna use that, and I think it makes it easier on us, and I know we're not at 100%. Bobby Baker named, I think, 4 or 5 properties right off the top of his head when he said the meter's in the backyard. But one of them's in Cameron Crossing, he was spot on, it's in the backyard.
So what do we do with that?
Well, with case-by-case basis, you negotiate with this guy and say, look, can you get, you know, make sure you're not blocking the sidewalk, put it on the side, you know, I mean, and then we will also use the GIS, you know, as a backup, and I think that's been the rule of thumb. This guy's totally compliant. He's gonna move it, he's already building a pole barn, but again, how did that happen? By us talking to him, you know, and making him understand. So, again, I don't want you to think we're just rubber stamping stuff and being a communist and saying it's got to go, or 30 days it's going to be towed out of there. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
I talked to a guy who actually got with somebody who has an empty field.
Yep.
And he told him and all his neighbors could park their RVs in his empty fields. Be bothering anybody.
I'm very transparent about this. I have a fifth wheel.
Mhm.
It's in an RV lot.
Mhm.
And the day I bought it, you know why it's in that RV lot? Because I know what the ordinance said, even the old. So that's the thing. Ms. Vandergrift said it best. When they bought them, guess what? They knew what the ordinance said.
Well, I just wanted everybody to know, I know there's more people coming tomorrow, only because they call and I go,
Yeah.
I do think
It
it would
is
be
what it
wise that even though on the code enforcement side, they know that the sidewalks are in the public right of way, I think it might be wise for us to put it in the ordinance to specifically say that RVs cannot be over a public sidewalk to help the people that are actually reading it. Because the average citizen that I talk to doesn't know what the right of way is and they don't understand the sidewalk. So I think that would help if we just update it to say that it can't be over a public sidewalk.
Well, be careful with that. Pine Forest, Bobby. The sidewalk, you know, during election season, you all know your sign's gotta be up behind the telephone pole. If you go into the Pine Forest subdivision, the sidewalks are behind the telephone pole on private property. So you have to, that's not a good guide, I'm just telling you. I think you stick with what you have, the water meter, and then we do a case-by-case basis if it's in the backyard. But trying to use a sidewalk, you have to, I think there's more skewed sidewalks than there are water meters. Would that be accurate, Chris and Bobby?
Well, I would think so, and the sidewalk projects that, like, for example, we're doing on Illinois Avenue, we moved a lot of those sidewalks to the very back of the right of way. So if a resident had an RV that they were already parking, that wasn't blocking the sidewalks, we moved the sidewalk back, we're still in our right of way, but now all of a sudden it's blocking the sidewalk, and they haven't been an issue before. It's kind of a,
I would steer very clear of that. I mean, Mr. Fields, I get what you're saying, but I really think what you have in place with the water meter, there's gonna be exceptions. We have to, like anything else, do a case-by-case basis with it, but for an overall guide, I know, I feel confident enough by saying, Bobby, am I correct? There's probably more sidewalks that are out of place than there are water meters. And again, this is pre-existing. You guys are dealing with pre-existing conditions.
Right, so
But if-
distance from a telephone pole or distance from a sidewalk would be just as much a quagmire as the water meter?
100%. Water meter's your best go. And I think that last meeting, I didn't want to leave here until we had some type of guide, and that's what we came up with, was the water meter.
Well, if we're going to use water meter, we need to have it written as a caveat if the water meter is a certain distance into their yard. Because right now, you and Brian, you know this, but we're making an ordinance for the future. So once you guys retire, they could go back and start using this ordinance to start
But
enforcing it.
Mr. Peebles, I don't think we're gonna go around and dig up and replace a bunch of water meters.
That's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is you write the ordinance as it is now.
Right.
Say, use the water meter
In the ordinance.
in the ordinance, and then say if water meter is further than X amount of feet.
I wouldn't be careful. I'd be careful putting anything. I would just use the water meter and then let them call if they say, hey, my water meter's in the backyard, because call him the wizard, but he pretty much named the 5 or 6 in the city that were behind in the backyard. And so
What happens when the meter's in the backyard? Then
what I
what's
was
the
telling
limit?
him, we go to him, and then our default at that point would be the GIS mapping from the county. And then if they contest it, then they'll have to go before the magistrate, and he'll have to make the decision.
Then we can just put that in the ordinance.
Before it
It
goes
doesn't need
before
to
the
be.
magistrate, we would
It
have
does
to.
for the people that are reading it. I understand that from an enforcement standpoint, sure. I'm talking about the average Joe that goes to the ordinance and says, what's the ordinance in the city? And then they can read it and say, oh, okay, now I know before I buy an RV. Because me as a citizen, I'm going to look at the public right of way and I'm going to say, what is the public right of way? And then I'm going to search it up and it's going to say 10 feet from the road because that's our utilities right of way. And that's confusing. And so it is our job to make something that's enforceable, but it's also our job to make something that is legible to the average person to read it and understand what they're getting into. Because I disagree.
The language could be the common, keyword is common, boundary would be behind the water meter.
So from my perspective, I don't think any change is needed to the ordinance, and here's why. A public right-of-way, because it is not standardized, but it is a commonly used term. It includes a lot of things, and by using the water meter as the method of enforcement, the measurement, that's an administrative decision, and it may change with the administration. However, because this is a code enforcement process, if you, a citizen, are not sure if your RV is parked in any portion of the right-of-way, you have 2 avenues. One, you can ask someone to come to your house and inspect it. Is this in the right-of-way? And change your behavior accordingly. Park it in a way that is not in violation. Alternatively, if you are put on notice, and you disagree that you are in the right of way, you can challenge that. That's what the special magistrate is for. That is the due process that is built into this whole system.
Yeah, but then we just wasted man hours of sending out code enforcement, wasted money of sending people going to the magistrate, when we could just clear it up by putting it up where it's readable.
It's your ordinance. You can do whatever you want. I do feel like the systems you have in place already provide for those one-offs where the water meter may be in the backyard and the right-of-way is not as clear.
Well, it's not just the backyard. There's some that are like way up close to the house,
I bet my water meter's 10 feet from my front door.
My water meter's on my private
Mine is
property.
one of the ones that is about 10 feet off my concrete sidewalk. So, I mean, the majority of my front yard is on the city right away. But I mean, at the end of the day, when they built my house and I bought it, I knew that.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm just saying,
And here's the thing that concerns me. It concerns me more for the water department when they have a break or a leak. You're telling me I can't have my RV beyond that, right? We want to argue the point that it's so close to my house, then come fix this pipe. Even though you're telling me it's on my side of the meter, you're now going to allow them to say, guess what? You told me that I couldn't put it there. Now Chris and them are going to have the argument, if I can't have my RV out that far, you come fix this pipe regardless of what side of the meter it's on. You have to be very careful with that kind of verbiage, what you're trying to do. I would leave it the way it is because it's successful and it's working. Just the way it is.
Can we possibly give the public something? And I know this sounds so minute, but it's a positive rather than telling them everything we want to take away. I know a lot of people who travel in RVs. I've had one come to my house and spend the night, and they just pulled their RV up in my front yard, slept there, and they left the next day. Is there any way we could add to this ordinance something about if you have an overnight guest coming, call, let the city know they'll be there overnight, so there's not an issue. It's kind of giving the public a little extra something than just, we're gonna take this away, we're gonna take that away. You don't like that one either.
I know it's not that. I just know that you guys fought a hard battle about trying to get people out of living in RVs post-storm. So you're kind of teetering right back to that direction. I know it's an overnight. It's kind of like when you're traveling on the road in an RV, a lot of RV grounds allow you just an overnight place to sleep while you're traveling. I know in essence that's truly what people would try to do, but then you're going to have the people, well, they ended up saying another night. Then I feel like you're going to get back into fighting the battle of people living in their RVs and their driveway.
I tell them to come over here and park across from City Hall in the parking lot.
Actually,
On the second night.
send them to Cracker Barrel.
Or Walmart or somewhere else, I get it. Okay, so just a thought, positive.
Any other discussion on the RV ordinance?
That's not a deal. That's not a hill I'm willing to die on. What I was saying, I was just throwing it out there. So, if you guys think about it and tomorrow you want to talk about it more, just let me know.
And based on what we hear from the public, 'cause
Yeah.
I'm afraid they're gonna be lined up.
All right. Any other matters to bring before the commission?
Sure, I got one. So, after the meeting, our last meeting, I had two people from the senior center come up to me and they said, hey, so we heard someone say something about the mailbox. Well, there's only one person in the senior center that actually wants that mailbox. So I was like, you know what, I'll go to the senior center and ask. And so I made an appointment over there and I went over to the senior center. And before the second I walked in, I didn't even bring it up. The first person that saw me said, we don't need the mailbox. And I was like, okay. And then someone else came up because they didn't even know I wasn't coming there specifically for the mailbox. I was just, this is a good time. They invited me, so I'm going to come over. And then someone else came up. I had 3 different people without me even bringing it up saying they don't need the mailbox. Basically what they said was there's one person there that wants it and they have their own mailbox. They just don't want to use it. And basically that person is upset with the officers or whatever over there. And they came to us and complained because they wanted to go over their head. So to me, I get that one person wants it. But if the majority of the senior center doesn't, I don't feel like we need to spend any time from the city to do that, especially considering we don't even know if we don't even have the power to put it there anyways, because then the USPS is going to have to do their whole thing. So I just want to let you know that I did do my research on it and went over and talked to them, and it appears that it's just one out of many that actually wanted it. And they were upset with people at the senior center, and they came to, I think it was you that they brought it to, and so that's just how I bring that.
Well, we've always had an outgoing mailbox at City Hall for years and years and years. It sat right out here on this corner, basically before this was built. Sat right here on this corner, was there for years. Anybody could pull up, throw their mail in it, and leave. I mean, it wasn't just for the senior center. I just felt like if the mailbox was back there, but it's no sweat off my butt. I have a mailbox.
And
at
they
home.
did contact me and say the same identical thing. That was not a priority for them at all.
And they thought it was the little mailbox, like Chris, that little piece of junk mailbox they got out there. I was just
That's
trying
right.
to get the one replaced that has been here for 25 years.
That-
That got picked up during the storm and never put back.
I think we did research on that
We
and,
Googled Earth that there was, what you're talking about, but where you used to turn in between, was at a church that they used to have the commission meetings in?
yeah.
Right there, and you could just pull up and drop your mail off.
2007, I think we
Yeah,
saw
it was
on
the
there.
last time we saw it was 2007. We actually went back and did the mapping on it. And the last time it was there was 2007. It was even gone before Hurricane Michael. So yeah, we went back and did all of the mapping on it to try to see where it was. And the first time we saw it was, the last time we saw it was
I have to look back,
2007,
but it was long
2010, somewhere along in there. So, that has been,
Yeah, it's no issue for me.
no,
I mean, I'd use it just because when I drive by here, I could throw my mail in there and be done.
So you're
But that's
talking
what
the
it was used
actual
for.
USPS box that people can drop off their
The,
mail?
the blue one, blue.
The big blue one.
Oh, I thought you were talking about this one for the.
No,
senior
not
citizen.
just that little one. Matter of fact, that same lady they're talking about over at the senior center, I talked to her too, and she's got some big fancy idea for something she's gonna put up there to replace that little mailbox thing, of which they don't even get their mail in. She told me, she goes, no, we haven't bring it in because we don't like it left outside. That was the whole conversation that started. I don't like leaving mail sit around, you know. And she says, I never put outgoing mail in that mailbox because you never know who's going to swing by and pick it up. So it's no sweat to me. I just brought it up.
One other thing that they brought up when I was over there is, you know where we used to have our meetings over there? Or we were sitting right behind, like when I seat one, right to the left, there's a little door right there. And they were wondering if it was possible that they could have some of our stuff removed from there so that they could use that as a little office. Because they don't really have, they'd like a little area where they can have like a little intimate area that if they want to have like one-on-one meetings with, you know, because they have officers there. They have like a president and a treasurer and all that, and they don't really have an office space. And they were wondering if that we could move our stuff from that little office area just so they could use that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to, I don't know, have one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, and they have talked to Jennifer and I about that. And I told Cuddy and a couple of the officers, we sit down and meet because they do have a computer room in there as well. That, you know, we could turn that into something, move those computers somewhere else. We want them to feel comfortable wherever they are. So we do have a couple ideas. We're gonna, and I thank you for talking to them as well. A couple ideas we could do to make them happy.
That's true. They do have, yeah, there's definitely some space room and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other matters to bring to the commission?
So tomorrow, we have this item on the, do we need 12 on the agenda? I mean,
I'm probably in the minority here, but I don't think the water meter is the way to go. I don't. I just don't. I don't know about you guys, but
well, we're going to be listening to a lot of people tomorrow, probably who are going to say the same thing as you.
yeah.
So
I say leave it on the agenda.
we'll leave it on the agenda, but I mean, I guess the discussion from the public will warrant.
It's going to drive that whether we
Whatever,
table it
well,
or
whatever
whatever.
we decide. I mean, is there any other clear definition besides the water meter that we, you know, because the suggestions from the emails I got were telephone pole and sidewalks, measure distance from there. Is there any pinpoint on the county map or anything that you can use as a central point or of any kind? So we have something else besides, I mean, we could say the rule of thumb is the water meter, but is there a surefire go-to from there?
Telephone poles.
Well, I just said that, and they said that would
Like
be,
Chief Ramey mentioned about the county GIS showing the right-of-way line,
yeah.
that is you know, I'm assuming what his code enforcement officers go to. If there's not a water meter in the front yard, they would go to the county GIS line. And if that still didn't solve the issue, I mean, ultimately, especially before it went to a magistrate, we would have to have a surveyor come out and properly mark the right of
So
way.
it's called the county GIS line.
County GIS right of way.
Yeah,
yes.
it'll show your property line. To me, that's what it should be anyways, is your property line. So,
I guess my question about the county GIS is that some houses I look at, they're actually like in the middle of the line.
Right,
So,
the lines are definitely off, the lines are not perfect, it's just a good go-to in the
Yeah.
field or while his officers are out there speaking to the resident.
I think one thing, speaking of which, I think one thing we may want to do is if you Google on our website, Glen Haven right of way, it's talking about the utility right of way, not the public right of way, which is different, but that has created some confusion. So maybe if we want to just like bold the utility or change the word just a little bit to someone like us that are in the weeds of it all, we understand what it's saying. And, but if there has been multiple people ask me about it, that means that maybe we can just change the words a little bit. Hopefully that'll prevent some confusion is all. Nothing was done wrong there. It's absolutely legal and kosher to me. I just think that it won't take that long to update some verbiage on the website to prevent any future confusion, because I know people are going to bring that up in the future as soon as we start talking about this again.
Is that that's your military training, isn't it?
Well,
Clarify everything. I mean, I'm all for it. I think everything should be black and white.
I review policies for a living.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you said that on our website.
So have a different definition, so this is utility.
Yeah, I mean, it says it, but maybe just change the.
And then put a definition in for what public right of way is.
Well, there isn't one for public right of way. It's just that if you Google Lynn Haven right of way, the
Right.
first thing that pops up is that policy 94 or whatever. You click on it, and it says like right of way protections. Maybe if we put utility right of way protections or something,
Okay. I can look at that.
because it, like I said, it's technically correct. There's just been some confusion, and people that are upset are going to go straight to that thing.
Sure.
And people don't understand the telephone pole thing, even during election time. I can't tell you how many, if I give somebody a sign and I go by and they have the darn thing out in front of the telephone.
Yep, yep.
And I go, oh, I forgot to tell them they got to have it behind the telephone pole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't ever want sidewalks on Virginia either. Don't ever put them in, please.
Any other matters come before the commission? All right, city manager, please, give us the layout for tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Tomorrow, of course, we'll have commission meeting at 9 a.m. and then meeting following, we'll go into a strategic plan. We'll probably just rearrange here. I know that you normally are down from the dais so that you can sit here and really chat with each other. So we'll have the chairs rearranged a little differently and go through several exercises. The 5 cornerstones. Amy will talk about policies and procedures, strategic planning, capital improvement, some visionary things so that we can continue to improve our strategic document. We have updated it. I think you'll be pleased with some of the updates in it, but we want to hear from you and make sure we're in line with your visions as well. Then we will break for lunch, come back and finish up and hopefully be out of here about 3 o'clock. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Staff will be here. There will definitely be interaction with staff. You can ask staff questions. That's what needs to be happen. If you remember, I don't know, I think Commissioner Tender and Commissioner, I can't remember if Commissioner Parnell were here when I first started this in 2020. I think it was 2020. It was an all-day section, and the commission asked me to keep it going, that it was very helpful in giving insight and vision to everything. So we will kind of follow that same.
We had the big pad so we could write down ideas and stuff.
Yes, ma'am, you're exactly right. Yes. Okay.
All right, thank you. In regards to strategy, again, just reminding everyone to send to the city manager your concerns regarding the ULDC and comp plan, so that we can start or continue working through that as well, addressing, I guess, the highlighted areas that are of immediate concern to you, because there may be, unlike the ordinances, we have been going through the ordinance sort of section by section, sequentially going through those. However, I know there have been questions that we've had about the ULDC that we might have got citizen-driven complaints or concerns about that we can address more immediately, as opposed to maybe waiting to go through that sequentially as well. So whatever your areas of concern are, again, get those to her, and then we can lay out a plan to work through those as well. All right, if nothing else, we'll see you at 9 a.m.